dependent on the importation of food will be even more at risk if the pandemic continues. And I must say that we need to face the fact that given the current consumption and production patterns the world is practicing, will yield to a continuous, unfortunately, a continuous recurrence of certain of these pandemics. And figures indicate for the last several decades, actually, due to climatic changes and due to the disturbance or the imbalance in the ecosystems affected by human intervention, has led to increase in the incidence of disease. And the figures are almost 4 times as much as compared to before 4 decades ago. And the fact that we have, or the world has been taken or facing such a climate in a sudden way, that the world worldwide, the countries worldwide were not prepared to face such a pandemic in terms of whether it be from the health aspect, environmental aspect, or the economic aspect, reveals the fact that we need more resilient communities that are well prepared to face such incidences in the future. Of course, here again, if you look at the right-hand side of the slide, actually, its figure says that, or the study indicates that the likelihood of the situation, especially the stunting for children, and is going to increase, especially children under 5 affected by wasting. And then small-scale food producers are hit hard by the crisis, comprising 40 to 85% of all food producers in developing regions are being affected by the current pandemic. That means that addressing or trying to achieve sustainable development goals, including the ones dealing especially directly related to addressing hunger, poverty, and the like, we need to shift gears. We need to change the way we have been doing business. We need to focus more on a green economy approach, and a circular economy, on a sharing economy. And this is the fact that many countries, even in Europe, are transitioning to these, or adopting these core principles for meeting not just the sustainable development goals, but being more resilient in future. How can we deal with such crisis or such pandemics? We're talking about regenerative agriculture, for instance, and regenerative economy in general. I mean, it's not just sustainability that we're aiming at. We're aiming for a regenerative economy in all sectors, whether it be industry, agriculture, tourism, cities, sustainable and smart cities, adopting nature-based solutions based on, of course, innovative technologies, new ways of doing things. People now, and actually the trend is going back to nature, which is more of the, I mean, if you look at the main principles for regenerative agriculture, it's going back to multi-crop cultivation rather than monocrop, to give the soil and the land the fertility it needs. They're talking about agroforestry, for instance. They're talking about avoiding tillage, which breaks down the cycle of the nutrient cycles of the soil. So we're going back. It's like going back to nature, and being in harmony with nature, living with nature. And if you're talking about cities, for instance, or villages, we're talking about building with cities and being in harmony with the environment where we're at. Otherwise, we will get what we are facing today, which is really severe, not just health situation, but an economic, environmental, and the social situation. So what does this mean? I would like, again, to share with you another slide here, which you may find interesting. Let me see whether I can get it. Hope I haven't lost it somewhere. Yes, this one. All right. Now, you're seeing this slide, right? Okay.
No, please share again, please, Doctor.
Share again. So I need to share.
Click this. Yes. Share screen down again.
Okay.
نفس الزرار الأخضر تحت زي المرة اللي فاتت.
تمام. استنى خليني. Okay. This one. All right. Share screen, which is this one. Okay. Can you see it? Am I sharing?
تمام.
Okay. So this slide, what it says basically is that, I mean, why the SDGs in general? Why any development strategy or plan or program? It's basically to achieve the well-being of the welfare of the citizens. Unless if the strategy is not aiming to achieve that, then we have a problem. So the core of any development strategy is to achieve human welfare and to be inclusive. And this is actually the circle in the middle. But to achieve that, you need to strengthen climate resilience, because with the current climatic situation and that we're facing, and the impact this has on water supply, on food supply, and impact it has on food supply, on desertification, on the incidence of rainfall, on the heat waves and the recurrence of heat waves, of storms, which we haven't been witnessing before, but we're facing and we're experiencing, and we're vulnerable really to such climatic conditions. So we need to build or strengthen resilience as far as the climate. How can we face, adapt and mitigate the climatic conditions we're facing? And in the agriculture sector, we know that, and we see that year in and year out, how it's impacting negatively on productivity and on agriculture yields. Again, we cannot have a sustainable agriculture sector or a sustainable industrial sector or whatever the sector is, without making sure that we're not damaging biodiversity. And we all know that biodiversity is being a lot of there is a lot of loss in terms of biodiversity. So we need to ensure, because this is the lifeline of any human activity, and it's the lifeline, mainly the livelihood of local habitats, local communities, and of course plants and animals and insects and other living organisms. So any plan, whether it be agriculture or whatever, has to ensure that biodiversity is, and agriculture, if we lose biodiversity, how can you maintain the agriculture sector and ensure that the production or yields in that sector is on the increase? Of course, innovation building on behavior changes patterns. I mean, now, energy, water, other factor inputs in the agriculture sector. We're talking about efficiency in the use of water to start off with, efficiency in the use of energy, efficiency in the use of factor inputs, whether they be fertilizers or pesticides. And of course, we're talking about environmentally friendly. Now, as we all know, that the trend is more going on the lines of sustainable agriculture, organic agriculture. It's good for the health. It fetches high prices in the market. Now, the argument may be, or someone may say, well, but we're looking for productivity. But there are figures which indicate now and studies which indicate that organic agriculture and sustainable agriculture and regenerative agriculture is on the rise in terms of increased productivity, because you're using more nutrients, you're using fertilizers, you're using compost, which is coming from the ground, which is more organic, and helps in fixing carbon rather than in practices that induces carbon emission, whether they be in the form of agriculture practices or in the use of fossil fuel. And of course, we're talking here about using more innovative technologies in the agriculture sector. Now, as we all know, the term is being now familiar to many people, farmers working in that sector, which is called the precision agriculture. How can you use smart agriculture using artificial intelligence to monitor irrigation systems, to monitor the way plants are growing, using, of course, drip irrigation systems rather than flood irrigation systems, so that you can save water, which is, again, in many countries, including mine, we're facing, of course, severe issues related to water, and the water scarcity is an issue. But anyway, using more smart irrigation systems actually promotes productivity, promotes or cuts down on cost, whether the cost of water or cost of energy, and the cost of the use of environmental friendly fertilizers. Improving supply chain resilience and circularity. This is, again, I mean, I did mention green economy, I did mention circular economy, and this is where, again, introducing such practices in a sector like the agriculture sector provides an opportunity for diversifying activities in that sector. And through diversification, you create more jobs, you increase the resilience of that sector, you diversify the economy in general, and of course that helps achieve or contributes more to sustainable development and to increase in the increasing the GDP. Activities such as you know, the recycling or composting of agricultural waste, for instance, the use of other, and this is where we're talking about when we talk about circularity, you're talking about how can you then make use of the agricultural, I don't want to say waste, but I would like to say residues, because it's not a waste, it's a resource, whether it can be converted to compost or other factor inputs like, you know, the rice husks, for instance, which can be recycled or used for other purposes. Palm trees, the residues of palm trees are now, as you know, are used to produce furniture, wood, and which can, of course, be converted into furniture and other uses. Now, so to address, to be more resilient in that sector and to be more productive and more cost effective and to be more competitive, because all of this helps us achieve or helps us to be more competitive in our system in the agriculture sector, because it, as I mentioned, it cuts down on cost, it produces quality products which can fetch high prices in international markets. It improves health, human health. It reduces the cost of medicine and medication, and hence increases productivity of the farmers and improves the livelihood of farmers. So let's say the main, let's say if we can refer to them as the main the main determinants for an activity, whether it be agriculture or industry or tourism or urban development, smart cities or whatever, is cutting down on the use of natural resources, reducing waste, reduce waste in terms of waste, we're talking about, and pollution, of course, air pollution, pollution in waterways, and hence you improve the health and the well-being of the community. And through that, you produce, let's say, good quality of products, which provides a win-win situation. You cut down on cost, so you're more effective, you're more cost effective, you're more competitive because your product is less costlier, and fetches a good, have good access to international markets, and at the same time you're being conscious of the environment. So you're actually investing in not just in the natural resources which exist at the moment, but also for the well-being of future generations. I think this is basically let's say more of an introduction to what I want to share with you in terms of the shift from business as usual agricultural practices to a more inclusive, equitable practices that ensures the integration of the different stakeholders. And we're talking not just of government, but we're talking about, which is not just the federal government, the local government. We're talking about NGOs, civil society, cooperatives. We're talking about private sector. We're talking about the role of women, which is critical, especially in countries like Sub-Saharan Africa and North African countries as well. We're talking about engaging youth and the role of, and without really ensuring that the different stakeholders are on board and are well aware of the approach that, or the transition that we need to make to ensure a more resilient and sustainable sector and economies in general, then it's going to be very difficult to achieve or to address that specific goal, and in general to achieve sustainable development. And through that, we ensure empowerment of the different, let's say, stakeholders. We encourage the sense of ownership and the sense of belonging, which in some cases may be missing. And of course, through education, public awareness, outreaching to the farmers, outreaching rural areas. And actually, that reminds me of something interesting, that there is generally a reverse trend. If we start with Europe and the States, we see the incidence of people migrating from large cities to rural areas, because now they can work from a distance, so there is no problem. So they can work from anywhere, and they might as well go to more serene areas where there is more space, cheaper for them. It's more going back to nature. So I think what we're seeing worldwide is a reconciliation with nature. Now we hear about a Green New Deal in the States. In Europe already they have adopted a Green New Deal. In Egypt, for instance, we're talking about what they call a green recovery strategy, and we're working on that in terms of investing and allocating funds for green sectors, whether they be renewable energy, renewable water, desalination, recycling of water, reuse, We're talking about reuse of waste, recycling and reuse of waste. We're talking about, again, sustainable agriculture, sustainable tourism, clean industrial practices. I think we have no choice. We have to make that shift, and of course, through research and development, proper education and awareness, I think we can make it worldwide. And the issue here is not that it's only one country which has to do it in order to get out of this crisis, but it has to be a worldwide approach. All countries have to do it. I mean, we can see what's happening. We cannot move, we cannot travel. And if a crisis happens, a pandemic happens in one part of the world, it affects the entire world. So it's a clear signal to us that we really need to change the way we have been consuming, the way we have been treating the environment, the way we have been developing policies. Integration is key. Good governance, of course, is key. And I think you had already a session on that, which addresses issues related to accountability and transparency and the public participation, which again is one of the key principles for achieving sustainable development. We need to engage. We cannot develop policies in isolation. We need to make sure that different segments of the population are on board, especially women, youth, and marginalized communities, including, I don't want to say handicap, but the underprivileged and the people with special needs. Let me refer to it to them as such. People with special needs, they need to be engaged, and we're talking about an inclusive and resilient societies. I think because I know we have started a little bit maybe late. I don't know at the time, we're already 6 o'clock and I don't want to take much more of your time, but I would like to share with you quickly, skim through a presentation. Let me see, a new share, this one. Okay, I think it's this one. This is a project, this is an initiative in Egypt, in the agriculture sector, dealing with the malpractices and how we can engage civil society. Can you see the, I think, can you see the presentation? Yes? Can you see this? All right. That's the current practices in many farms in Egypt and around the world, really. And our intervention in this one was really how can we shift current, and through public participation. We gathered the local community, local people. We cannot start something without really engaging the local community and ensuring that they're on board from day one. And the idea here was to stop burning the agricultural residues and transfer them and convert them into compost. So here we're showing them on the ground how we can make compost and what are, of course, the benefits of compost. This is the situation. That was the situation, organic waste all over the village, working with the local people, hand in hand with them, showing them how they can separate waste, how they can make these rows for composting. And while we were doing this, we found that nice little girl was dumping waste in the middle of what we're doing. So they are used to doing this, and you can see on the bank of one of the tributaries of the Nile. But that is basically a quick run of the sitting with the local people, discussing with them, garbage collection. That's quickly. Okay, right. So that's basically, that was an initiative in Giza, which is one of the governors. That's the Minister of Environment at that time. So we spent the day there with the villagers, with the farmers, trying to, raise their awareness to the need to change the practices and how they can grasp the opportunity which greening their sector can provide through converting the hazard, which is burning the residues after the trimming of the trees, into a compost which is more provide more nutritious to the or nutrients to the trees, and which is more nutritious to the plants, and enhances the productivity of soil and of their products. Let me stop at this point, and I'd be more than happy to answer any queries or questions you may have.
Yes, we have some questions written in the Q&A.
Okay.
I will read it for you.
Okay.
And if any of the participants would like to participate with us, please raise the hand. So we have Susan has a question. What is the place of nutrition and a balanced diet in the wellness and inclusive circle?
Again,
you can press Q&A question down.
Where is it?
Yes, down
chat?
the screen.
Oh, Q&A, okay.
Yes, please, and read it.
Yeah. What is the place of nutrition and balanced diet in the wellness of inclusive circle? That's okay. I'm not sure I understand that, but basically, we in our part of the world, we have a problem of a balanced diet in general. And the fact that, for instance, in some countries, they're not to, or fish is not,
yes, sure. Why not?
part of the balance of the food. Yeah, I think there is intervention in the sound background. But here the in a lot of, let's say, African countries, cassava, for instance, is a nutritious food. The sukuma wiki. I think there is someone from Kenya and other parts of the world who it represents staple food. So it's not just. And now there is a trend, as we all know, to reduce the use or the consumption of meat, because of the fact that it produces a lot of, it consumes a lot of water, and we have a water scarcity problem in most of our countries. And in addition to the fact, to the what they call the pollution, meat growing, and of course the fact that food fodder is not sufficient in many parts of the world. So a lot of countries are really shifting to a plant-based food intake rather than meat-based food or nutrition. Okay.
Yes, we have another question. Dr. Hayat, please.
Thank you, Dr. Hussein, for this brilliant presentation. My question is how, I will switch in French, it's more comfortable. Comment peut-on assurer un passage accéléré et efficient vers une transition écologique et vers une économie verte réussie, sachant que nous avons des grands défis concernant la budgétisation et l'investissement, concernant le rendement de ces investissements et concernant l'adhésion et la participation citoyenne quant à l'engagement des communautés par rapport à l'écologie verte. Merci.
Okay. Let me respond in English, if that's okay with you. I think I got the question here. Basically, the green economy, the main principle of the green economy was exactly that investing in the environment and investing in natural resources is the way to, first of all, diversify the economy, because you create new economic activities like composting, like solar energy, like renewable energy in general, whether it be solar or wind or biogas. It creates new jobs, decent jobs as well, which are more sustainable and are there for the long term. It increases competitiveness. So it's not simply an approach which is different from sustainable development. Green economy is nothing but a tool, and circular economy and a sharing economy is nothing but a tool to achieve sustainable development. So basically what we're talking about is that, and that is, the point I tried to make at the forefront of my presentation, that you cannot isolate the environment from the social and economic aspect. And dealing with the environment in isolation actually did not take us far, because we did not make the point that investing in the environment, it's not as still perceived by many people and many politicians that it is a constraint to development. On the contrary, it's a main entry point to development, and it's a main entry point for improving not just the human welfare, of course, which is the end goal for any economic activity or development activity, but supports the GDP, because it enhances through revitalizing the economy and creating new economic opportunities and being more competitive and cost effective. You're achieving the economic objective through investing in the environment, creating more jobs, which is the social aspect, and improving health, which is a social aspect, engaging marginalized communities, the youth, women, all sectors of the economy in the development process. So it's a more of an integrated approach to achieving sustainable development, and of course human welfare, which is the end goal and the core of any development plan or strategy.
We have Maryse. Please go ahead.
Hello. So thank you so much for this insightful presentation. And I'd like to ask.
Yeah, I think we can't hear you. No, so, can you? Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you now.
So I was basically asking, how can a country, or especially developing countries, ensure reducing their carbon footprint and shifting to green economy, while actually without increasing the carbon abatement cost? We know that shifting to a green economy is actually costly, or it has a kind of abatement cost. So how to reduce this without actually increasing the carbon footprint?
Okay, I mean, key, as I tried to mention actually in my brief presentation here, is that the main determinant for, or let's say the givens for any for the development of any plan, whether it be in agriculture sector or any sector, is cutting down on emissions. And we're talking about decoupling. Okay, decoupling an economic activity from pollution. Because if green economy at the end of the day increases pollution and does not result in a decoupling effect, meaning that, yes, you need to increase your productivity, you need to revitalize your economy, you need to increase production, but you cannot do this on account of the environment. You cannot compromise the environment while you do this, because if you do this, you end up in a situation, well, that's what we're facing, what the world is facing today. GDP, as we all know, is not a good representation for development, because it does not reflect the, first of all, it does not integrate environmental damage as such. It does not integrate the social aspect, health aspect. It's not there. It's just figures. So it is not a good, or let me put qualified, it's not a measurement, a good measurement for sustainability. And that's why countries are opting for, you know, sustainable indicators and the Human Development Report, as we all know, to help us, or to help guide countries and put them on the right path of development. Because if you have a plan, if you have a strategy which ends up by damaging the environment and the ecosystem, then you'll end up by having an epidemic like the one we're having, or you end up by having, I mean, because we don't count that cost. I mean, what is the cost of the pandemic now on the economic, you know, and businesses and on the economies of countries? It's damaging. I mean, how many trillions is the USA giving as stimulus packages to deal with this? I mean, I think the last approval was $1.9 trillion. And I think Trump also sanctioned similar amounts. So you can see the cost to the economy because of unsustainable economic practices and development patterns. So we cannot afford anymore to follow that track. We need to ensure that the policies we develop are good for the environment, are not just only good, we're investing in the environment. And that's why I mentioned regeneration. You regenerate your natural resources, you enhance your natural resource capacity, whether it be energy, water, land, and other factor inputs. So the mindset of developing policies need to change. And I think we're getting there in most of our countries. I think in many of our countries, actually, whether in Africa or Asia, we're shifting towards greener strategies, circular economy strategies, sharing economy strategies. This is, we don't have a choice. We need to do that. We need to do that. Thank you. Okay.
Yes, Dr. Sadia, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much for this opportunity, and thank you so much for this presentation. Very important. I'm from Algeria and also in Canada, and I'm a founder of Global Women in Agri-Tech to empower women and youth and girls in this sector. Very interesting. And the question is, knowing that the public health depends on the health of the soils, how can we definitely ban pesticides? What is the role of academic research in nature agriculture? Thank you so much.
Okay, no, this is again another important question. And you see what we have, and when I say we, again, I'm talking about the international community at large, many countries. I mean, we develop policies, or countries in general used to develop policies not in coherence with one another. Meaning that you develop regulatory policies and you may have market-based incentives which run contrary to the regulatory frameworks you're having. Meaning that you may have a regulation which says, cut down on costs, cut down on emissions. We need to cut down on emissions from that level, so many tons to so many tons by the year, so and so. But you have in place incentive measures which go counter to that you continue, countries or governments continue, for instance, to subsidize fossil fuel. And that's happening in the West. I mean, you cannot have, on one hand, a regulation which says you need to cut down on emissions, and at the same time, you have an incentive measure which encourages the use of fossil fuel and discourages the use of alternative or renewable energy sources. So this is again the financial sector. It's key here. We're talking about mainstreaming the environmental sustainability aspects in the finance sector. We still have a situation where a small and medium-sized enterprise, for instance, or a small entrepreneur goes, he or she, they go to the bank and they request for a loan. And of course, if the project is not viable, economically viable, which may be detrimental to the environment, but it's economically viable, he or she can get the finance. But if it is environmentally viable, but does not yield the same profit as a conventional project, then they don't get the loan. And that has to change. So we're saying that policies, first of all, they need to be harmonized. There has to be, we need to ensure policy coherence between the different policies, including, of course, coming back to your question here, I had to go around the question a little bit. How does education systems support sustainable development? Do we have calibers that are, for instance, in the agriculture sector, that practice and are well versed with sustainable and organic agriculture systems, smart and sustainable agriculture systems? Our systems, our educations, and not just us here in our part of the world, but I'm talking generally. Things are changing, but we're talking about integrating sustainability in the different disciplines. Okay, so you need to integrate that in teaching non-conventional, more innovative and sustainable agriculture practices, and research and development needs to be supportive of that, so that you have, because again, and that's the experience also we have unfortunately in Egypt, for instance, that you have a lot of research, but it's not supporting work on the ground, and it stays in the cabinets and whatever, and you keep on rehashing and researching the same topic without necessarily, so you need to gear the research topics to serve and support sustainable agriculture practices, ecotourism, sustainable and smart cities, so on and so forth. So this is key, again, R&D, and as we all know, the share of investment of funds allocated to investment is very, very low in our part of the world, and that has to change if we want to make a qualitative shift to sustainable development.
Doctor, we can take the last two questions, please. We have Mary, if you would like.
Yes. I'm Mary Brumichael from South Sudan. Actually, I want to give my appreciation for the presenter for giving us this very good topic. What I wanted to pose here is about women and agriculture. As we all know that women really contribute a lot in agriculture. This starts from the time of planting, preparing of the area, planting until the time of harvesting. But when that time of harvesting comes, women are sidelined sometimes. You find that this role now is shifted from them, and it goes to a different person. So how can we change this this kind of mentality, or how can we change this role that the women are playing so that they can also benefit really in agriculture, as they are the sole people who are doing in agriculture? Thank you so much.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for your feedback, and thank you for the question. And you see, empowering women is key, and we can see how women in Africa really are taking, a real lead role in that, not just in that particular sector, in generally in the day-to-day life. Not just in the rural areas, but even in major cities, and that has to change. I'm very much for the notion of that, give women a real chance, and I think things will change, because The way I mean, I've been traveling a lot in Africa, and when I used to go on planes going, let's say, from Burkina Faso to Benin or to Gambia, I see the plane full of women, merchant women, moving from one place to the other. And I think women really are not being given the right, let's say, position that they really deserve. They take on their shoulders tilling the land, cultivating the land, collecting the harvest, and on top of that, rearing children, taking care of their homes. And their role should really be well acknowledged. And even when it comes to, getting loans from banks, that has to change. Definitely, if we're talking about sustainability and about empowering and inclusiveness, we cannot function like this. We definitely need to ensure that women are given the deserved and right, I say lawful role they really deserve, and they need to be well acknowledged to the tremendous role they do, not just in the economic front, but of course in the different areas they work with, rearing children, educating children, and ensuring that brought up children are really shifting towards a more sustainable lifestyle. And thank you again for the question and the other questions I got. I understand there is another question.
Yes, the last question. Machilisu, please.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. I had actually put some of the questions at the chat box, but I was just going to speak to youth issues. That youth unemployment is very high, especially in this part of the world. But young people are not really keen. They don't have that much interest in agriculture, both boys and girls, or male and female young persons. They don't really take much interest. There's just a few of them. So I was just wondering, in terms of into the future, what does this mean for issues on food security? The other one is water scarcity in the continent and in relation to food security, because agriculture is supported also by water. If there are other alternative ways. Lastly, okay, research you've spoken to. I had posted a question on agricultural research, which I think is very important. You did speak to it, and also the fact that sometimes research is done, but it's not implemented on the ground. You don't see much, but there are many PhDs in offices and so on and so forth. That is one of the challenges in Africa. But lastly, the GMOs with the and food security for Africa. You did speak about organic food and so on, and health in this whole cycle. What about GMOs and food security and poverty in relation to this? There's more, but let me just stop here. Thank you very much.
Okay, we need another session. To answer these important questions. But I think the first question you raised a very important issue again, which I should have mentioned here. The fact that the rural sector has been neglected in most of our countries. This is the problem, and that has led to a lot of rural to urban migration. And we all know that the trend has been and continues to be an increased migration from rural to urban areas, to the detriment of the agricultural sector. And that's why I think what I've been pushing for here in my own country is that to develop the agriculture sector, it needs to be developed within the framework of rural development. Because why people are leaving and migrating from rural to urban areas? Because most of the rural areas, they lack the basic services or infrastructure, sanitary systems, water systems, water networks, electricity, health services, social services in general, whether it be health, education, employment opportunities in the rural sector. I mean, they leave their own community and go to the city in pursuit of jobs. And you end up living in slums and creating problems in the urban areas where countries are not, or where cities are not equipped to provide such services. So, and then that has led to the neglect of the agriculture sector. It's not anymore. It's not used to be anymore as it has been in the past. The main, that's the experience we've been having in Egypt. But there is a reversal to that. I mean, actually, as we speak, I mean, a month ago, our president has launched a campaign or an initiative to rehabilitate 1,050 villages with the infrastructure needed, roads, transportation, electricity networks, water networks, so on and so on. And of course, that will definitely help the agriculture services and the sector in general. And as I mentioned, there is a reversal worldwide to reverse migration from urban to rural areas because of the current pandemic we face. So we need to make agriculture attractive again, and attractive, I mean, by creating new employment opportunities, agriculture, organic agriculture, and agro-agriculture activities needs to be promoted. So you create industrial or industrial related activities to the agriculture that promotes or increases the value addition of the agricultural products. So that is I think rural development or agriculture development within the framework of rural or integrated holistic approach to rural development. Adopting water saving techniques, cultivating or selecting crops, and we mentioned research, so we need to invest more on research on water saving crops, on heat resistant crops, and of course crops that are resistant or resilient to salinity and drought. And this is where the research has to be directed to. And of course, crops that, you know, we're shifting, for instance, in many countries, shifting from high water intensity products to agricultural products to products or cultivations or plants that use less water and to reduce the water consumption. Now, GMOs is a big question, and that is, I mean, if the argument, for instance, for using chemical or synthetic fertilizers and pesticides and whatever is to increase crop production to meet the increased level of population and demand on food crops, we need to ensure that whatever we're aiming at does not yield or does not result to negative impacts on health. That is key. Fine, you can, if people insist that we still need to use synthetic fertilizers because they produce higher crops, but you end up paying more at the end of the day because you have to deal with health problems, side effects, and problems emanating from the soil pollution, water pollution due to excessive use of synthetic fertilizers. So at the end of the day, is it worthwhile to do that or not? So GMOs, again, we need to ensure that they do not have negative impacts. And we need, it's enough, let me put it this way, it's enough messing up with the environment. Unless we're sure that, and it has been well tried, that it does not impact negatively on the environment and health, and does not disrupt the ecosystem in general, then we may want to go for it. But otherwise, I think we have to be very careful with using or introducing GMOs in our countries, especially if we're not sure of these negative health impacts that they may have on the human population.
Thank you, Doctor, for this lovely presentation. We have all the feedback from our participants, some chats and all. It's impressive. And I would like to introduce Dr. Hanan for a second, please.
Dr. Hussein, thank you so much for such a wonderful presentation. All of us enjoyed it very much. You can see from here, and we have a WhatsApp group with the participants. They are really happy with the presentation. They learned a lot, and we are so grateful for your contribution this year to our program. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I'm very happy to be with you today and to hear the feedback and the kind of questions I've been receiving. I think they're very smart questions, and I wish you all the best.
Yes, and participants will continue discussing these issues regarding agriculture and sustainable development goals with you in the platform in the designated area for the trainers.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Okay. Take
Thank
care.
you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
Bye.
كنت انت عشان الشركه دكتور كنت انا بشوفه الخميس الجاي